Today we're going to be discussing half steps and whole steps. Now, a half step is moving from one note to another note with no note in between. Here's an example. Moving from C to C sharp is a half step. Moving from D to D sharp is a half step because there's no note in between. Moving from E to F is also a half step because there is no note in between. Moving from F to G would not be a half step because we have an F sharp in between. So moving from F to F sharp is a half step, and from F sharp to G is a half step. Likewise, from G to G sharp or G sharp to A. So it's moving chromatically. That is moving in half steps. Going from one note to another note with no note in between. A whole step is moving from one note to another note with a single note in between. So moving from C to D is a whole step. Moving from D to E is also a whole step because there is a note in between. So D to E is a whole step. Moving from E to F is not a whole step because there's no note in between. So let's use some random examples. Moving from A to B is a whole step because there is a note in between. Moving from B to C is a half step because there is no note in between. So a half step is moving from one note to another with no note in between, and a whole step is moving from one note to another with one note in between. Now, how is all of this relevant? Well, it helps us to basically understand how our scales are made up. So let's take the C major scale as an example. The C major scale is just moving from C to C with all the white notes. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And a major scale is that familiar do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Let us translate that C major scale into half steps and whole steps. So from C to D is a whole step. From D to E is another whole step. From E to F is a half step. From F to G is a whole step. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a whole step. And B to C is a half step. Let's summarize it. So to form any major scale, we move two whole steps, a half step, three whole steps, and a half step. So C, two whole steps, a half step, three whole steps, a half step. Now we can take that formula and add it to any starting note to form its major scale. So let's take D as an example. If we start on D, D, and we now go following the same formula, two whole steps, a half step, three whole steps, a half step. So whole step from E to F sharp, half step, three whole steps, G to A to B, B to C sharp, and then a half step. So the D major scale, which we just formed using that formula of two whole steps, a half step, three whole steps, a half step. Let's do another example using B flat. So if we start on B flat, here we can go 2 whole steps. So C is a whole step, D is a whole step, then a half step carries us to E flat, then 3 whole steps, so we skip this note, F, G, A, and then a half step, B flat. So to play the B flat major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And that's it. Half steps and whole steps. Hope you enjoyed this one. See you next time.